Welcome back to Chris and Jen in the Morning. Today, we're opening up the vault and revisiting our absolute favorite moments. We've combed through the past episodes to curate the ultimate countdown. These are the top 10 self-care and life tips for living a happier and more grounded life. From small micro habits that reset your stress levels to powerful strategies for protecting your mental energies, we're replaying the foundational insights that transform how we navigate the chaos of everyday life. Whether you're tuning in for the first time or re-listening to your favorite moments, get ready to elevate your routine. Let's jump in to the top 10. Number 1. Practice agency and own your energy. The world can feel heavy, and while we cannot control the chaos of external events, we can always choose how we show up. Join us as we explore the practice of agency, reminding you that you are in the driver's seat of your own internal energies, even when reality feels unstable.
You don't always choose that first feeling that comes in, but you get to choose what you keep with you. You get to choose what you tell yourself. You get to choose how you show up for other people. And it doesn't mean you have to choose what you aspire to all the time. Like, give yourself the space to just be a human.
Right.
But it does mean that, like, we have agency over our energy, and you don't have to just be at the whim of what is going on in the world. You don't have to let everybody else dictate how you're going to feel, whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day, whether it's going to be a good year or a bad year. You don't have to just hang on for the next, person to come into office or the next, job to have or whatever. Like, things can be crummy around you, and you can still choose to have a different energy. So I think that's just the biggest thing, is reminding you, like, take your power back. We have agency. You can own your own energy. And it doesn't mean that you have to live in some make-believe world of magical thinking where you don't know what's going on. You don't have to hide from the world, but you just don't have to be dictated by it.
Right. You have choice here. You do have some control. And in the places where you do have that control, set yourself up for success. So that way you can show up as your best self.
Yeah. Now, what really helps in creating this space for yourself is having good boundaries. We just don't care about what's going on because you can care deeply and still, be able to have those boundaries about your experience through life. So what this really is about is that we get a choice in how we respond to the situations happening around us, whether they're like at a macro scale or things just, keep going wrong in our own lives. That this is about giving us a way to protect our nervous system so that it doesn't carry us into overdrive and we feel like we're in constant panic and stress and we move into like the manic space. It's about a commitment to being intentional about how we show up, and really all coming back to the practice of agency. I'm a big believer in reminding myself that I have agency over myself, which means that I get to choose how I feel, what I think, and how I act. And nobody else has that power but me. So I often give it away freely, but I get to take it back.
Yeah. And whenever you brought up this idea of owning your energy, I know at first I was like, well, what do you mean by this? And so we kind of dug into it a little bit more, but it's really like that, I acknowledge the reality that I am in. I'm honoring those feelings that I am experiencing, and I'm still choosing how I choose to show up. And I appreciate you like bringing this topic up, because I had never really like framed it in that way before. But in that instance, like, it does feel like, oh yeah, I do have a little bit more control.
Number 2, use name it to tame it for awareness. Before you can change your path, you have to acknowledge where your feet are planted. It's time to pull that emergency brake on emotional spirals by practicing name it to tame it. Discover how simply labeling an emotion can turn down the intensity and move your brain from reactive threat mode into a state of reflection.
You have to put yourself back in the driver's seat, give yourself agency, and say, what is it that I choose instead of what am I allowing to be chosen for me?
Yep. So how do we do that? Because if we are on this, let's just call it a runaway car. Let's stick with the car analogy. How do we take back control of this car that is going on a rampage?
Well, the first thing you have to do is pull the emergency brake. And that is naming it to tame it. And we talk about this a lot. This is a theme. So this is like one of, I think, the core strategies for being able to live a happier life is awareness. I always say awareness is the first step, but name it to tame it. Before we can choose the energy we want, we have to stop fighting what's already bubbling up. And that does not mean ignoring it. It does not mean that toxic positivity. Sometimes you do have to fake it until you make it, but that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is
well,
about...
I do like this takes me back to that conversation that we had about like having conflicting feelings. Like in that day, I was feeling so many different things, and I just remember texting you like, "Oh my gosh, I don't like. There is so much happening. I don't have the time to like process all of this. It feels very heavy." And I just remember your advice was like, you first like acknowledge what is happening. Like, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Don't ignore it. Don't push it down, but like figure out like what it is that you're feeling. So that way you can then start to wrap your arms around it. Not your exact language, but the sentiment.
And it sounds like such an easy thing to do, but I mean, it's not. It's often not easy because a lot of times what's easier, at least for me, is what am I thinking? How am I acting?
Right.
But to really sit down and think about like, what am I feeling? I'm feeling sadness. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling afraid. I'm grieving. It's really important to just give yourself the few minutes to stop, get quiet, and reflect.
Yeah.
And if you have to go physically put yourself in a different space, I do this best when I am in motion. So for me, to stop and get quiet means to go for a walk and not listen to anything, not call anybody, but just to have that space where I'm moving. So that kind of helps me process through the anxiety of, getting in touch with my feelings. But then I really can think through things a little bit better. So it helps keep me focused. But find what works for you. The first step is always acknowledgement, always getting over denial. Because the more, if you're in denial, you can't do anything about it. So you got to name it. I'm angry. I'm not tired. I'm not being dramatic. This is really important because to me, it's like easy to label it as I'm just being dramatic. How many times have I called you and said, I'm just being dramatic. I'm crazy. All these things. No, I'm not dramatic. Oh my gosh. I mean, I had talked about this situation I had where I had a loaner car while I was getting my car fixed. And it was like the perfume smell in it was so intense that it gave me literally a migraine. And yet I was like, to go back and ask for a different one, being dramatic. No, actually what you're doing is being dramatic by not just fixing it. Like that's where the drama's coming from. So oftentimes we create drama because we tell ourselves we're being dramatic when we're not, instead of just, saying, you know what, it's okay to like expect a certain, level of something.
Right. And it's okay to be angry. It is a real emotion. It is something that like can come over us and we don't have control. Right.
It's not bad. And so if you are not comfortable feeling angry, like you said at the beginning of this episode, I am a little uncomfortable saying that I'm angry, then maybe you just need to say it out loud to yourself. Like, I'm angry, and that's okay. It's not bad.
Number 3, set and maintain firm boundaries. Finding balance isn't about a perfect scale. It's about the lines we choose to draw. Setting expectations is a vital act of self-preservation that protects you mentally, emotionally, and even financially. Learn how to say no without providing any excuses and stop owning feelings that are not yours to carry.
The book is called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself by Nedra Glover Tawwab. She has structured, I found, in a very helpful way. So the first half is really about like understanding boundaries, why we may struggle with them, and why they matter as much in our lives. And then the second half is really, which I appreciate, right? Like I want to know the theory, but then I'm not like the theory doesn't always stick with me. I kind of sometimes want it like grounded in the actual, how does this show up in real life? So I feel like that's what the second part of this book was about. It's all about how we actually set boundaries in real life, whether it be with family, with your colleagues at work, in friendships, and all those places that we really sometimes can find ourselves in those uncomfortable situations. So, and she does clearly define, because right, the entire book is about boundaries, and one of the ways that she clearly defines it in the way that she's addressing boundaries is that it's really important. It's an important part of self-care, and it's understanding how boundaries protect yourself mentally, emotionally, and in some cases financially. So it's all about like these things that we're putting into place to protect ourselves and to make sure that we are being true to who we are. So that's just a quick, like very high level perspective on what the book is about.
I would say the boundaries that we place for ourselves, there was I can't remember the exact point, but there is something about, she talks about how when you set a boundary with somebody else, the first person that has to maintain it is yourself, meaning you don't go back on your own boundaries.
Yes.
Because that's like such an easy thing to do is, oh, well, it's okay this one time, telling yourself that. Like, it's okay they did this. I think the example that she gave is like the mom showed up unannounced or something. And it's like, she talks about how it's really hard for yourself because you feel guilty and you feel like I'm being a bad person and I'm like all these things. And I totally relate to that because that's how my family, my growing up family had always treated everything of, well, if you do something to the family, you should feel guilty. You're disappointing everybody. Like, and so I grew up with that mentality of like, well, you know, I don't really like doing this. I don't really like to have these interactions, but gonna make an exception. And I'm, you know, and that's kind of what I talked about earlier, where it's like, boy, if you don't give yourself priority for what's important to you, other people will just take it from you. Like they'll just see it as an opportunity of, well, Ace will give in and he'll give me $50 or, you know, whatever. He'll drive me to Timbuktu because he's a good guy. He'll just do it, you know?
Right.
And it's like, I'm not prioritizing my boundaries to myself to be, hey, no, I'm not going to do that. I've, you know, that's, you know, and that was the second thing is she's like, don't give excuses. Like, just say no, like, and leave it. And that was another thing where it's like, I forget to do that because I still want to make an excuse to make them feel better or to give me an out or I don't know. But she does a really good job of telling you to just say no. Like, and that's it.
You don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I don't think you need to justify, and I think if you set that boundary and you tell someone, but I do think there may be a learning opportunity if they ask why.
You don't have to, like, you need to, if you are already struggling with setting a boundary, then you set a boundary and it feels like you have to justify it and get buy-in from other people and almost like you're almost doing this subtle permission seeking from them about whether it's okay for you to set this boundary, and you need them to understand why you're setting it so that they can give you permission to set it.
Right.
And so I think the reason behind her saying you don't need to explain it is stop this behavior of trying to get permission to set the boundaries. Just set the boundary. She doesn't really communicate it that way in the book as she's written it. And this is where I felt as I was reading it, like some of it was just really intense, I think is the word that I kept saying. Like some of her examples feel like things I would never say. And not just because I struggle with boundaries. My therapist was like, interesting. And is that because, you know, this is something that you need to work on? And I'm like, no. I mean, I get it. This is something I need to work on. And so part of reading this book is uncomfortable because of that. But part of it is like a communication style, I think. Yeah. And so I do think there is a difference between not explaining so that you can seek permission, even if you don't realize it's what you're doing. But it's not about like withholding information. Like it doesn't have to be combative. Like no, I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to tell you anything about it. The whole
Right.
point of setting boundaries is to create more peace, not more tension.
Well, and I think she does explain, like,
Yeah.
in the setting of boundaries, like, you don't owe anyone an explanation of you wanting to seek happiness and peace within your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that would, like, or seeking permission from them for those things.
It is so tempting when you are not comfortable setting a boundary because you just want to avoid whatever tension you think that's going to cause, or you feel obligated, or, all of those things. It is so tempting to try and dip your toe in the water by seeking permission, but then you just get walked over, and you end up resenting it even more, and it actually creates more tension in the relationship. And so I think that's her point behind, don't over-explain it. Start with just stating what it is that you need. And then to your example, if there's somebody that then has a question or wants to understand more, use good judgment, helping them understand the journey that you're on.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to, you need to think about whether or not that's going to benefit the relationship.
Right. Great. Now, how do I make sure that I don't carry that around with me for day, week, month, year?
Well, I feel
about
like
how I did.
There's a part at some point in the book where she does talk about that. She talks about how if you're waiting until you feel like you're going to be comfortable,
yes,
don't. You're just going to have to do it because you're not going to find that moment where it's comfortable. But she also talks about how you have to set a boundary with what you're willing to emotionally take on. So there are these more tangible boundaries of what you're willing to, how you show up with other people, how other people show up with you, people just, family just showing up at your house unannounced, and hey, you can't just show up at my door unannounced and expect me to make time for you. I may not have time for you.
Yeah.
But there's also when I then tell you that, I need to set a boundary with myself of not owning your feelings about that. Because basically what by owning your feelings about that, I am saying that your feelings are more important than my feelings. And that I don't get to have these feelings about this. So she does talk a little bit about setting a boundary emotionally of what you're willing to own. And I think I struggle with that a lot. I tend to over own as that people pleaser, that skill, that sort of coping mechanism that you learn to try and soothe everybody else's feelings. Just that becomes a problem if you don't put those boundaries in place, because other people own their feelings. You don't own them.
Right. But I think that's my point of what I felt was missing is that, because I think we can all understand people are allowed their feelings, people are allowed to have their own emotional whatever, but that doesn't mean that it still doesn't impact me as the individual, other person, because I don't want to make people feel bad. I don't want to but it's also, I want to respect, I have this boundary and I need you to understand it, and I need you to but that still doesn't mean when someone does cross it and you enforce it, doesn't mean that it still doesn't make you feel a certain way.
It doesn't make you feel, well,
doesn't
she
say
you
have to be okay with not being comfortable?
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
a thing she says over and over in the book is you're going to have, if you're going to do this boundary setting, you're going to have to be okay with feeling uncomfortable and feeling guilty. And you're just going to have to move past that, because eventually you're always going to feel that way, whether you give in and cross your boundary or do whatever they want you to do, or if you don't. So wouldn't it be better for your peace and for your well-being to just be okay with being uncomfortable until, you're hey, this is what I wanted.
Number 4, trade perfection for effectiveness. Perfectionism is a trap, a survival mechanism that often backfires and robs us of our joy. We're trading the unachievable for the finishable. Applying the 80% rule, we're embracing the truth that 80% completed always beats 100% imagined.
Your life slogan is, if you're not first, you're last, in the words of, who was it, Ricky LaBobby? Then here are some things to understand about what is going on inside of our brain when this is happening. So we know that perfectionism or chasing perfect can be a threat response. There's like this error monitoring system that reacts more strongly to mistakes sometimes. And sometimes it's like how you were brought up. Sometimes it's just that you're more predisposed to that because that part of your brain is bigger. And then, the way that we're brought up. But this is not like it's not a defect. It's a learned activity that we use, and sometimes for our benefit. But when it becomes like this problem where it sort of steals our joy, that's when we have to do something about it. So if you're seeing judgment or failure as dangerous, like the brain is registering that as a threat. And what do we know about our brains when we go into threat response mode? We know that the amygdala kicks in. We know that we all of a sudden get hyper-focused on the threat, and you actually lose capacity to think about other things that are not the threat. Yeah. So just like, when somebody's giving you feedback and they do the sandwich thing, you don't hear the positive at the end because you're just hyper-focused on the threat. And that's a good sign that you're in amygdala hijack.
I mean, we've talked about this countless number of times, and I'm just having this aha moment. Like, this is probably why whenever I'm going through, like, planning something, I try to go through every possible scenario I can think of.
Yeah. So then there's the 80% rule, which is, I think, very much a different way to say effective is enough, right? Like, but I use this at work a lot to kind of put myself into pragmatic brain, where I go like 80-20 rule. Like, I got to get, 80% of it is really what matters the most. Not that I am going to deliver something that's not going to meet the needs. But like, if you're trying to meet the needs for every single possible scenario, then you're stuck and you're not going to deliver. And so this is something that I learned very early on to try and accommodate this is, okay, first we just have to take care of the 80%, and then we have our plan for how we deal with the outliers. But, that's a strategy that you can use if it fits. I mean, it's not applicable in all scenarios. Is certainly, I think, a handy tool.
Yeah, I mean, I work in a creative space, and it's so interesting to hear the two different sides of this argument. Like, good is good enough. And it's like, no, we're avoiding that. We're not using that. It has to be the best. It has to be perfect. And it's like, but then you have people who get on this loop and then like, oh, we have to make sure, like, is this right? Does this need to move like, a quarter of a centimeter? And so it's like you're chasing this and...
Well, who decides what's perfect anyway? It's like oftentimes it's like this really ambiguous, like there's not one exact right answer, yet we back ourselves into thinking that there is.
And so I just think like it's interesting how you put it, like in certain circumstances this is applicable, and others it may not be. I certainly don't want a doctor coming to me and saying like 80% good enough, like that.
No. We can't be. No. That's exactly.
Number 5, utilize grounding and sensory skills. In a world that never stops moving, it's easy to drift away from the present moment. When you feel caught in an anxiety loop, your senses are your way back to stability. We're diving into the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method to help you reconnect with the right now and build the muscle of internal calm.
It actually, like, what are the actual steps or the physical sensations and things like that you can tap into to ground yourself. And part of me is also like grounded, as in like I take off my shoes outside and put my feet on the grass or like touch a tree.
That is sometimes what people do. It is because it connects you to the present of right now. It takes you out of all of the past and the future and really connects you to what is going on right now. And you get connected to what you're feeling, what you're thinking, all of those things. It helps you pull away from when your thoughts or emotions. So I'd say you get connected to what you're feeling. But like if your feelings are carrying you away somewhere else, it actually can help you pull back from that if you're not ready to process through those in a productive way. So being grounded means being internally stable, even when external things are unstable. It is connected to the present moment here and now, which I'm not very good at. So this is something I have to use these tools because I don't naturally do that well. Emotionally regulated, being emotionally regulated.
Sometimes when you're like, I'm just not going to deal with this now. Like, to me, flight is sometimes those things of like, nope, I don't want to deal with this today. I'm going to go over here and do this. And
it's going to close the door and walk away.
Right, exactly. And I think sometimes that's okay to do, but I think that if you're not going back and truly giving it the time and attention it needs, that's when it can become a little bit of a ball of wax that you have to then work through.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, what do we do? How do we, if we're bought in, that grounding is a healthy practice that we can deploy when we're either feeling numb or we're feeling anxious? What do we do? How do we do it?
I go to my favorite podcasting platform and look up Chris and Jen in the morning and listen to this episode.
I think there are several ways that you can seek to be grounded. You can seek to be grounded through physical grounding, through mental grounding, through emotional grounding, and through lifestyle grounding is kind of the 4 ways that I would group them. So what some of the physical ways, and I like these because I tend to be disconnected from my physical body. So then my body gets really loud before I start to pay attention, like in the car in that moment where I'm like, everything is falling apart. I've been ignoring it for too long. And so, like you said, do I take off my shoes and go outside and stand on the ground? Maybe. If you're like me, I don't want dirt on my feet, but put your feet flat on the floor. And that helps physically to ground you. You start to feel the floor touching your feet. Cold water, like your rain experience.
Yeah, exactly. I think another interesting one is around this idea of holding ice, which I've never done that. I've never thought about it to be as this way to physically ground myself before. But I am going to try it next time I'm needing that, because it does make sense, right? It's a shape, it's a texture. There's so many different pieces to it that it's engaging a lot of your sensories.
Number 6, prioritize sleep as biological maintenance. We often wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, but your brain sees it as a warning sign. Every night, a biological maintenance crew clocks in to repair cells, file those memories away, and wash metabolic waste out of your brain. It's time to stop cheating your rest and start to protect your future self.
You hear people say, well, I'm just going to catch up on sleep over the weekend. You actually never really fully catch up on sleep, because the brain cleansing mechanisms and the cellular restoration, they're time locked to the circadian biology. It's not just this cumulative hourly deficit clock that you can then sleep off later.
Catch up on.
And so neuroscience actually shows that lost deep sleep and damaged neural connections cannot be instantly reversed by simply sleeping longer later. Yeah, the brain's inability to simply bank or recover lost rest. There's several neuroscientific realities behind it. So one of them is lymphatic wash cycle. Sounds a lot like the dishwasher analogy, right? But the lymphatic wash cycle is what happens during deep non-REM sleep. So that N3.
N3, yeah.
It's where the brain actively flushes out that metabolic waste we talked about, the amyloid beta is one of those forms of metabolic waste via pulses of that cerebrospinal fluid. And missing the window means accumulated cellular debris that can cause immediate attention lapses. So your brain can't compress this multi-hour nightly maintenance routine into single sleep-in sessions. Because remember, we talked about those cycles of sleep occurring in these like 90-minute windows. So if you just like sleep in an extra hour, like you're not getting enough of those
cycles,
glymphatic wash cycles to happen.
Well, it's interesting because they say that you should have like 4 to 6 of those in any like nighttime session or, you know, sleep sessions. So that's interesting that if you have to go through it enough times for it to like really clean. So if you put in a dirty plate into the quick rinse cycle,
yeah, I
it may
wish
not
we
happen.
had a super wash cycle, but apparently like we haven't figured that out yet. So it talked about circadian rhythm. Circadian misalignment is something that happens when you try and catch up on sleep. Your body actually, whether you have, you know, dancing rhythm or not, your body is actually tied to rhythm. And we think about like all things in our world that surrounds us have some sort of rhythm to them. The moon and the tides are connected together, right? Everything is going on a pulse or a rhythm. Your heart beats at a rhythm or a pulse. So the circadian misalignment happens when you try and you make up for sleep. And so sleeping in on the weekends to compensate for your work week throws off that master biological clock. And if you want the technical term for that, that's the suprachiasmatic nucleus. I don't know if I...
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The suprachiasmatic nucleus. Just throw that one out at the dinner table.
I don't think I learned that in school.
But your body's designed to release specific hormones like melatonin and its opposite serotonin at set times. And so shifting your sleep schedule actually degrades your overall quality. So what happens with melatonin and serotonin, those balancing hormones, is the melatonin gets released. So like you're producing it and it gets released so that you sleep. And then while you sleep, you're building serotonin.
Yeah.
And then that serotonin helps you feel, you know, joy and happiness and like keeps you from being depressed. And then while you have enough serotonin, you're producing melatonin. And so without the serotonin, you cannot produce melatonin. Without the melatonin, you cannot produce serotonin. And that's where the imbalance happens. And so when you don't keep a regular rhythm of that, all of your hormones get disrupted. So, you know, gosh, I mean, we wonder why such a high percentage of people are on medication to help balance their melatonin or serotonin. So if you don't sleep enough and you're not getting enough sleep, then your healthy synapses are getting damaged, and that takes like time to repair. And it can't just be like in an extra, you know, few hours of sleep on the weekend. I think that's really, really important to note, that like just living a lifestyle where you say, well, I'll sleep like 4 hours during the week and, you know, 8 hours on the weekend. Like
catch up on the weekend.
It's not going to work.
Well, it's also interesting that like they've put those connections together with the research around Alzheimer's, like that does lead one to believe there could be some connections.
Absolutely. And then there's receptor sensitization. Try to say that 3 times fast. So sleep debt builds up this adenosine in the brain, and that creates this sleep pressure. And while a long nap or an early bedtime can reduce this pressure, the structural synaptic brain damage to brain regions responsible for memory, like your hippocampus, and emotional regulation, like your amygdala, require consistent long-term restorative rest. And so if you're not getting that consistent long-term restorative rest, your amygdala and your hippocampus just aren't operating as well.
Number 7, curate your inputs and media intake. Your emotional response is an algorithm's currency. And it's time to reclaim your agency. Are you seeking information just to support your existing bias, or are you brave enough to be objectively curious? Learn how to audit your inputs and protect your nervous system from being rage-baited for views.
All of these like social media channels that are monetized. So, there are accounts making money off of views and engagement. We understand negativity bias exists, and they're really counting on that. So we're wired to pay more attention to alarming information. We know that. I mean, back from the days of the newspaper and headlines, and you read the headline, and so you pick up the paper, and then you read the story, and you're like, okay, well, that was a bit of a hook. And so, but when when identity or values feel threatened, we go into defense mode. Now, I think understanding that, like, sometimes that can be used for good, right? It's a way to get attention. But when that's what we're constantly doing all the time, or constantly having put in front of us all the time, because that's what's feeding the algorithm, is really about making money. I think, like, you have to realize if you don't sort of protect yourself from that, you become a pawn in somebody else's money-making game. Like, really, truly. Your emotional response is their currency.
Some of them, I think, do it to stoke and to provoke, and others, I think, they do it in such a way to educate and inform. And the way that they go, I am not saying that either direction is right or wrong, but I think when you are looking for information on the other side, like trying to better understand the other side of an argument, maybe go the route of looking for the one to inform and educate versus the one looking to provoke and enrage.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because we don't need to walk around triggered all the time. Like, that actually does create this syndrome where, like, your adrenal glands are just in hyperactive mode, and you just live in this constant state of adrenaline, which we are not meant to do.
There's a framework that I read about, and it said, do I understand this, or do I just agree with it? Meaning, like, am I truly understanding what I am reading and getting the different perspectives and understand, like, there's more than just what's being served up, versus am I just reading to agree with this? Like, am I just going to look and give the time, energy, and effort to things that, only reinforce my beliefs? And I just thought that was interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. And so it really made me, like, I started to be more intentional about the things that I was stopping at and reading to see, like, okay, what about this is grabbing me, and why am I, like, clicking? If I have to, like, click into something, like, why am I doing that additional click to learn more, essentially?
I mean, I just get hooked. It's like the curiosity comes, and then I'm like, I wasted too much time on this, and I don't feel better for it.
Number 8, focus on micro changes and celebrate your efforts. True transformation doesn't require boiling the ocean. It happens through small, intentional shifts. Instead of waiting for the end result to find satisfaction, we're learning to celebrate the effort of moving from A to B. Progress, not perfection, is the path to a lighter life.
New Year's intention, resolution, whatever, just a goal that you have for yourself throughout the year. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to work out exactly how you think. And I love how you talked about, like, that, we try to get to A to Z without having to go anywhere in between. But also, like, we don't celebrate, like, those things. Like, whenever we do get from A to B, like, isn't that a celebration? Like, that's a step in the right direction.
Well, and I think we have grown up in a time, you and I, where people say, well, gee, participation gets a trophy. What that sometimes implies is, like, getting from A to B shouldn't be celebrated. Of course it should. We should always celebrate milestones. I was telling you this past week, I think I'm a terrible list maker, and I figured out why. It's because when I make a to-do list, I put too many things in one item. My item is like, build a website. And that's like a 75-step process.
Exactly.
But I can't cross it off my list until I've completed it. I think it's all in how we frame up the goals that we set for ourselves. So whether it's like weight or eating or balance in how we spend our time or, gosh, I don't know, Chris, positive self-talk. Like if you say, I have a lot of negative self-talk, and so I don't want to do that anymore, like you're going to fail. So you just need to plan to fail at that. And you plan to fail by saying, you know what? I want to have less negative self-talk and I want to be better at acknowledging it, not sitting with it, like stopping it and flipping it or counteracting it. Or, one of the things I like to do when I'm having a lot of negative self-talk is affirmations, because sometimes I can't find my own words. They're all really nasty. And so I'm going to use somebody else's words. Or I'll call you and say, Chris, like, I need you to say nice things to me.
Number 9. Align life with your core values. Beliefs change as we learn, but your core values are the constellations that keep you oriented in times of uncertainty. When your hope is attached to values like dignity, integrity, and connection, rather than specific outcomes, your brain experiences less stress and more peace.
But another way I think to think about values, like if I were to draw a word picture here, I love to look up at the sky and the things in the sky. And I might think about values kind of like the constellations in the sky. There are many of them. And when you look up and you look at them, you can kind of orient yourself to where you are based on which constellations you're seeing up in the sky. And there's many other stars in the sky. Like there's many other things. But I think values are kind of like the constellations up in the sky that sort of help you figure out where you are in space and in time. So when I think about my own values, it's interesting because I think, authenticity is something that's really important to me. Accountability is a value that I live by. Kindness is something that's really important to me. Individuality, balance, and like tenacity or drive or will or persistence, however you want to, whatever word you want to use, insert there. Gratitude is obviously a value of mine, and bravery. Braverism, as they would say in Wicked, is definitely, I think, a value that I have. And when you put all of these values up next to each other, I think some of them, there might be situations where you might think, oh, well, these things might conflict with each other, like authenticity and kindness. But I think that's how you start to really shape up the unique constellation of your values, is by saying, okay, both of these things are important. And so if you were to build a Venn diagram, where's the spot in the middle where they overlap? Because I do think that, like, when I say these are my values, if somebody else comes along and says, oh, I have those same values, that doesn't mean that we're going to believe all of the same things.
Right.
And so I think that's the difference between like values as a foundational layer and then beliefs on top of that. And, and like your moral code is defined by your values, but that's kind of like the kind of cross between your beliefs and your values.
Yeah.
And then that sort of informs how you make your decisions, which that's your morals. Yeah, that's the way I think about it. I think we have a couple of little nuggets of neuroscience in here that I think were, for me, also very meaningful. We had a lot of really meaningful ones this time. When hope is attached to values like connection, dignity, integrity, rather than outcomes, the brain experiences less stress and more emotional regulation, which I know we just kind of spent some time talking about that. Like, hope isn't about trying to control the outcome. But when your hope is attached to these values instead of outcomes, then there's less stress and more emotional regulation, because your values, regardless of the outcome, can remain. even when you feel like those values those are internal. So whatever is going on externally, your values internally are still there for you. So there's some stability there, I think. That's how I interpret that. Any thoughts that you have on that?
I think it's really looking at that as like I'm looking for meaning over success.
Yeah.
Like I think that to me is one of those shifts that whenever you start to reframe and think about this a little bit differently, it allows you to approach the problem in a little bit of a different way. And I don't know if you saw the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. People like loved it or hated it. And it really, like, I think that movie did a really good job. And I think it did it in such like this subtly done way that it's like hope is shifting from fixing everything to choosing kindness. And
I think I need to watch that right now. I feel like it's been on my list, but I knew that it was a sad movie. It's sad, right?
I don't think it's sad. I think it is the understanding of how when life happens and as we go through different seasons in our lives, how, like, what's that place of familiarity, what that place of comfort is, that changes and that shifts. And so I'm not trying to fix everything. It's that I need to be kind to myself. I need to be kind to those around me who are going through
I definitely
things.
feel like I need to watch that.
Now, I don't think a lot of people really like heard or saw that message potentially because it is a little bit more of an abstract, I think, message weaved throughout, but I enjoyed it. I watched that movie on a plane and I'm pretty sure towards the end I started crying.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is probably why I've avoided it. Though I have found myself, just like the sad songs, I don't know, I go for the sad movies. And then here I am, like on a plane surrounded by strangers crying and people are looking at me like, are you okay?
Number 10. Cultivate a chosen family. Human brains are biologically wired for connection, but family isn't always about sharing DNA. It's about finding the people who celebrate your authentic self and provide a soft place to land in times of trouble. We discuss the power of the chosen family, the people who help you become more of who you already are.
When you are not getting your needs met by the people that share your DNA, or if you don't have those people anymore, it like, yeah, that's hard. But also, it's not the end of your story. You get to write another chapter. So, and you owe it to yourself to do that because, we all only get so much time on this earth and we should spend it being as happy as we are capable of being. And we have more power over that than I think we often realize.
Absolutely. And I think the beautiful thing about being a human and living in this exciting world that we get to be in every day is that we get to keep creating our table. We get to pull up another chair if we meet someone who like pours into us and we feel that connection with. We get to make room for people who show up exactly as they are, and we want to show up for them. And I think like that's why it was important that we have this conversation is that sometimes you may not get that out of the family or community you were born into.
Well, yeah, and when we talk about inclusion and belonging and, there's all these different, ways to define belonging in similar, but slightly different ways. I think like really simply, what is belonging? It's not finding a place where you have to become somebody else to be loved, obviously. I think instead it's finding the people who help you become more of who you already are. Like they help you evolve into more of who you already are. That's what belonging means.
They turn that dimmer up.
Yes.
To bring it back to the light switch example.
You don't always want to wear your heart on your sleeve in every room because some people will see that heart on the sleeve and shoot the arrow right at it. But you do need to safe spaces where you can kind of unzip the tight, coat that you have around yourself and go, okay, I can just be free to be who I am and I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry because I know that you know me. And so if I say something that accidentally sounds off, but isn't really what I mean, like I don't have to watch my words super carefully when I'm around you, because you know me and you're not going to misconstrue what I say. And that's one that I hone in on, because like I say things that then end up sounding like something I didn't mean, because they have some connotation I never knew about. And I get really nervous about it because it happens.
Did you mean to say that? Is that what you meant to say?
But I know that you'll teach me.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also know that you're going to do it without judgment. You're not going to be like, oh my gosh. But recall, what was it, like a year ago? Here I was making these new friends. And I was so stressed out about like hanging out with them, because I didn't know, like, how are they going to perceive me? Like how am I going to show up? It's like stressful because you can't just like you guys don't know each other super well yet, so you just don't know. And
well,
so
I think you and I had a conversation to that extent. Like, if they're judging you based on, and again, this comes back from like me. I have heard someone tell me before that, like, I think it was you actually. Like, I am. It's not just from you. I've heard it from other people, but I hadn't really thought about it. Like you are a truth teller. Like, I don't know. Like,
no, I mean, cultural. Maybe some people do. Maybe there are a lot of people that I am just too direct for. I don't know, some people. You don't think so? I think so. Some people would rather have the lettuce in their teeth.
Okay, don't ever let me be that person, okay? I don't want the lettuce in my teeth.
That's why we are a chosen family. I'm not going to let you have lettuce in your teeth.
So I think like that's the whole the part of this that I think is really important, is that you feel like this is a safe space where you can, as you said, kind of unzip and create those opportunities to not be afraid of what you're saying, not have to feel guarded if you're talking about a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or the clothes that you're choosing to wear or that you want to wear. Like, creating that safe space for people is important. And
yeah, well, it takes a lot of energy to be on guard and to constantly be choosing everything that you say super carefully.
Well, that's it for this top 10 list. Join us next week for a whole new episode. Thank you and have a good day.